An important message from the Civil Defense Authority emergency systems. All citizens are instructed to return to their residence and shelter in place until further notice. Turn to your emergency broadcast station on your television, radio, or internet device to receive further instruction. I repeat, you are currently under a shelter-in-place order. Return to your home if able, or seek shelter immediately. Lodges of any kind are instructed not to turn away anyone seeking shelter. Individuals who are found to be in violation of the shelter-in-place order could face fines or jail. This has been an instruction from your Civil Defense Authority. Further instruction will follow this message on your emergency broadcast networks. Thank you. This message will repeat.
I do hope that, again, you excuse us for the, in some respects, lack of professionalism that you may hear as we move in. Some of us have been working on a long schedule here and doing our best to get you the information and the news as fast as possible to keep you up to date in the situation as we're dealing with right now. And this is a serious situation, even for those that do not believe or in areas where you do not see this as a serious situation. The situation in and of itself is indeed serious. And it's something that, even if, again, if you're not in an area that's being infected or that has been affected in general, that the concerns or having an eye open to the situation is very important. So as we can see now, Small Radio has moved over to our national feed. So we do want to thank you for tuning in, and in some hopes to spread the information that you're about to hear. So share it, make sure that everybody's aware of the situation that we're in here. The world is facing a pandemic of international proportions. At this time, we can assume that there is no place on the earth that has not come in contact with the illness in some way, shape, or form. We're again unaware of how the official spread is taking place or how people are getting infected in certain situations. We do understand at this time that coming into contact with those who are ill, sharing of fluids, that kind of thing, is definitely one of the big priorities. Wounds, injuries, that kind of thing is something that needs to be well looked at and we're going to say policed by individuals both in their homes and externally of their homes. But to say that anybody who has potentially become sick or has compromised immune systems, may be someone who is, prone to diabetes, heart conditions, any of this big stuff that we're having is something that you want to be made aware of, that you want to keep an eye on. And in some places, even if quarantines are being put in place, the options of self-quarantining, putting yourself in different areas, making sure that you have access to the medicine and other things that you need to keep your family safe. First aid kits, people who understand and know CPR. These are going to be huge things that are going to come into play later down the road here that are going to be very important, especially in quarantine situations where, as we see here, there may be an extended time when people are not allowed to leave their homes, even without any sort of quarantine situation. There may be points where, especially in these community centers, if you will, places like New York, Boston, Chicago, even places like Miami, any of these places that have large amounts of civilian population could put themselves in great risk. So that's the places that we're hearing right now. We're trying to get more and more information to you, and what we're going to be showing you throughout the broadcast is something that were brought to our attention during the initial outbreak, and I think it really brings attention to what we're dealing with here. The security cams, captured footage, stuff that's been shared on social media. I don't really think it's really gotten out there more. It's been a niche market for where this has gone, and it's very eye-opening and really makes you aware of what we're dealing with. These infected individuals are going about their existence. They're ready to strike at any moment, and it's very easy to confuse someone until they're, in some cases, right on top of you. These images are eye-opening, to say the least, and some have said they've seen large groups of infected individuals, some gathering, some in centralized areas. And what we've been told in some of these things is that these joined areas, such as one person said a bingo hall, other places like churches, any kind of gathering area, that we're being told to avoid them, especially open air. Interior buildings may be more safe, but for the most part we're seeing that a lot of these infected are going to these areas. The concern about familiarity that may arise with the condition, and the ability that the person is not making rational thoughts, that they're simply maybe on automatic, and they're taking and going to areas, whether they see this as a place where they're people, potentially maybe to spread the illness, or that it's just something that's memory in their brains that they're just trying to put together. So, but what's worse is these gathering areas seem like perfect places to have shelters and places to hand out supplies, especially for displaced individuals. And we're hearing more and more that there are a great deal of displaced people who are in buildings that can no longer live in these buildings because they've been overrun, if you will. So they're leaving those areas and trying to escape. Some areas have seen traffic jams, but for the most part we're not seeing a lot of that. Travel seems to be very well, again, in clustered areas like New York, and especially in people had concerns about places that initially started to report this, like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. These areas have been basically separated from others, so the idea of running into a traffic jam into a major highway does not seem like much of a concern there, or in rural areas. But again, places like Boston could be most affected by the people who are trying to move out of city centers, which we see that a lot. But so far, even with traffic jams, it seems like a lot of people are able to make movement and get out of certain areas if they need to. But again, they have these gathering areas as different options for them, and now we're hearing that these areas may have some sort of danger. So what's clear in most of these pictures is that we understand now why people feel or has stated that these are somehow undead individuals, that they have died and returned from the grave. And I know that seems hyperbolic at best. We've heard so much about things like voodoo, organisms from space. There's been a great deal of speculation among this. The major organizations such as CDC and other areas have said specifically that this is probably associated with some sort of drug, a drug interaction, or some way that this drug has bound its way to a bacteria or virus or other thing that has been able to infect people. So I think that's probably where they're most going to, but it is very easy to understand how people believe that's the way things are. Some of these are displaying grievous wounds, but what we have to realize is they are, if you're under the effects of certain stimulants, painkillers, there are possibilities you can do incredible things, and these have been witnessed, seen, shared to people. So there is potential that this is indeed some sort of, as they put it, metabolic change that is driving this. So even with the drive to deter social media from disclosing misinformation, these rumors and conspiracy mills are still churning at full speed. And we're trying to get a lot of information compacted to you too in a very short period of time. So what we want to do is make sure that your thinking process is as best as it possibly could be right now, and to not entertain some of this, and I'm going to say the word craziness, because the goal right now is simply to get something like a vaccine or a treatment of some sort, so that we can make it through this. There's a bigger concern right now than to worry about what we're hearing. So we are seeing a serious concern as infected individuals begin to become evident in the streets. You're going to see more and more of them. So depending on where you are, this could be a large amount, or you may some places not even realize that this is happening, but we can assure you it is happening. Population centers find themselves inundated with sick and afflicted. So mandatory lockdowns have taken place in much of the east and west coast at this time. Citizens have been advised to stay in their homes. You can hear that constantly blasted over the emergency systems right now, and there aren't many places to go as stores have been locked up. They packed up everything they have seen as valuable. So for some areas, going out to simply find some sort of supplies may be difficult, if not impossible. So having those things available to you at this time are huge. And at this time, there are major concerns of looting in all these highly affected areas due to this, but in all cases, remember that there is a stark danger to entering any complex, that the potential that people have left and closed up shop because they have infected inside has to be something that cannot be understated. National Guard continue to go house to house, and in some cases building to building, inspecting areas for the infected or those harboring the infected, which has become a huge concern. One health official from the State House has made a clear statement that these are no longer your loved ones or your friends, and that was a direct quote. Do not approach any infected individual and do not bring them to local hospitals or shelters. And I'm not sure if that's counter to what we have been told, to bring the sick to shelters, and I would like if we can check on that information. But hospitals in some areas are already simply closing their doors, so it's possible you can go to a hospital or emergency facility and it's locked up. One person said that a hospital was quarantined and surrounded by police and National Guard, and that she heard gunshots inside and was told to move along by the guard post that was outside. That is one of many that we have heard. It is not something that is unheard of. We have seen footage being broadcast of individuals stuck in buildings and they're requesting assistance. National Guard forces have made it clear that they've seen these videos and are actively performing rescue missions in these areas. So if you're stuck and you're broadcasting, help is on the way. So here's a report, what we were talking about. One of the first announcements made on stations was that those hiding in churches or buildings should make sure that these areas are well stocked with food and ample housing and medical supplies. These are concerns of individuals staying in makeshift buildings, and the concern is that further sickness could be spread among them. They're advising to contact the shelter, as National Guard and Civil Defense shelters are already set up in many centers. And we just read a report early that it may make this irrelevant, that infected individuals are headed for these centers of community and commerce, as one official put it. We hope that this information is going to clear up as we move forward, because the situation is very dynamic. That's one of the concerns that we have heard, is we have one thing that's saying one thing and one thing that's saying another. And that's interesting because it seems to be based on how advanced the illness is. I think if people, one area called, I believe it was called the snap, or a turn, that when this happens to people, that the idea of a treatment is no longer viable. So still, government officials have been clear that even though this may seem like an apocryphal event, and that's something that has been echoed by many online personalities and shock jocks, that the situation only needs time to be resolved and that they have things well in hand. So the first summation is that 2 weeks was originally what they planned, and that they will be able to catch up with the infection in hopes that in less time they'll be able to work on some sort of treatment, vaccine, or cure. That's official statements that have been made regarding the illness. And we have different areas such as Civil Defense, CDC, different kind of health organizations that are working together. There's been no word yet on the World Health Organization or what input they have. We do understand that the things are impacting other areas outside of the U.S. A great deal differently than they are in the U.S. So how those things are being dealt with is going to be questionable at best. People are trying to get information out as well as in to make sure that we have everything that we need to give you the best information possible, and working with, again, the government with an emergency hotline that has really become communication level. They've really set up their own way of forwarding information to people. So the government did enact an emergency radio transmission, which includes vital instructions and requests to relay that information to make sure you receive the information that's up to date. So they've also warned of independent information that may be inaccurate, which is something we were discussing earlier. We're keeping an eye out for that. But I think the concern is that we're transmitting outdated information more than anything. Things change so quickly right now that it has been probably our most relevant concern is how quick we're getting information to you. Is that information that we're giving to you accurate? And in some cases, this stuff is changing from minute to minute, not hour to hour. So as that information becomes more dynamic, one concern we are going to have to address down the road here is the way this illness is. How do you get it? How is it transmitted in ways that we don't fully understand? Is it something that may be airborne? Is it something that somehow some of us already have and that we just aren't showing signs? And if so, what does that mean for us in the future? What sort of things that we're going to have to do in preparation of this to make sure that we don't have any further problems? I mean, anything that happens at this point exacerbates the ability to get ahead of it. So, but again, most of this information has been, some of the information that we're receiving is just wrong. We just had a recent report of attacks by Air Force planes dropping bombs, as one onlooker explained, in a rural area, which was completely denied by the civil authority. They stated clearly that there is no exercise involving military personnel, and they have not been activated on domestic soil, and never would they be due to the danger to civilians. We've actually seen and heard that even military forces have not come to the national soil, if you will, due to the situations that are now transforming overseas. So the idea that such a thing can happen is impossible. They did add that there have been plane crashes due to individuals trying to escape infected areas, stolen planes, stolen helicopters, as well as what's being described as a National Guard jet fighter, which one did crash in Peoria, Illinois earlier today. They had a payload aboard that exploded and did a great deal of damage to the city. We're trying to figure out what loss of life it is, and it was caused mostly because of an electrical failure of damage nearby the airport, and its ability to warn people of the condition in the area. Now, what's crazy about that? Normally that would be top headline news. But because of the situation that we're running into now, these mass events become very small in comparison to the idea of something happening on a national level. So we've even also had reports here that we were talking about people being gunned down in the streets by National Guard, and we can only assume that what they are, if someone is being gunned down, it's potentially a group of infected individuals. I mean, the hope is that they are. But from what we're hearing, especially from those staff, is that it's more likely that militia of some sort, if it is. So these militia people are potentially taking actions of their own accord and within their own ability, and do not have as the military said earlier today, was a type of rules of engagement, or the way they deal with the situation. And if these are homegrown militias, that they do not have any sort of ruling that would prevent them from taking activity. We have seen sheriffs taking options to saying that they need different additional forces, and that they are enlisting the help of these militias just because of their ability to be armed. And even though the government has said clearly that they do not condone such activity, it's hard to say why, to tell them not to do that. So again, it's not advisable, but is it happening? Yes. Are there people out there doing it? Yes. But as a whole, I think it's very minimal in comparison to the overall whole in how people are dealing with the situation, which is the best thing to do, which is to simply quarantine to avoid any of the infected. So it also appears that our troops will not be coming home as we thought. One issue has been transportation, as many air traffic centers are lower activity or completely shut down, as well as additional methods to move troops. But what we're hearing now, which is becoming an unveiling situation, is it's not the worst of it. One state official speaking on conditions of anonymity said the rollback of military personnel across the world may have to be delayed as signs of Russian troops amassing along their eastern border. Various countries such as France and Greece have already requested help from NATO, and world leaders are concerned that the amount of Russia may attempt to make some sort of move upon land. The problem is all of these areas are currently in the grips of a mass pandemic. Russia has denied that they are making any moves towards any type of situation of war, stating they only wish to defend their borders from possible invasion from infected individuals, but that has done nothing to ease tensions, and the fear is this illness could lead us to war. So that's something that we did get in a while ago. We're simply amassing it now again. People saying that, military troops were active in our area. It can't be true because they're currently moving on this situation, and supposedly they are moving to have some sort of meetings to make sure that any of the agreements and things such as NATO are still solid in people's minds, and that they will come to the aid when needed. And that's yet to be seen. Again, each country is making their own moves to counter what they're currently going through. One of the things we saw also, that right after this incident, there was Chinese have made a public statement blaming the pandemic solely on the United States. So it may be clear that they are as well deep in the throes of the illness. We have seen footage from Wuhan of people being locked in cages. That has been leaked. China has as well started performing military exercises on their western border, and others within the region, most specifically places like Taiwan, have expressed concern over what they're calling rising tensions. The Middle East has seen a great deal of activity as well as tensions grew high. American citizens were asked to evacuate key areas, and a public announcement was made that the best course of action was to burn bodies of the sick. One individual posted publicly holding the severed head of an infected individual, stating that they refused to burn the bodies of the dead, and blamed the U.S. decadence for why they can no longer have proper burials, saying, continuing that Allah had called down a curse upon them, and that was a direct quote. One top defense official stated the biggest concern is that the sick could be somehow weaponized, carrying arms or explosives, and be basically thrown at the enemy, whether to deal a great personal damage physically or simply to further the spread of the illness, which is, I'm going to say, horrifying to say the least. And the information that we are receiving, we're trying to be, I'm going to use the word as diplomatic as possible or presentable. Some people have called it political correctness. I'm okay with that. But there are certain things that we simply cannot show and are unwilling to show or discuss during our broadcast at this time. We have to understand that things are very dynamic right now, and that we want to make sure that we realize that these are infected individuals, are people's families, and that we respect them accordingly. So we're trying to minimize what we show and what we discuss as best as possible to respect the people. One of the things that was brought up among the scientists is that asking if this is the same illness everywhere. The concern came up when video footage of an infected individual in the U.S. were slow and lethargic in their gait, similar to the effects of depressant drugs like the xylazine, which most people are associating with the illness originally, while the infected in UK and Korea are seen to moving at a faster pace. So simply is the potential that is motivated by a different drug, and scientists seem to believe that this is indeed the same illness, but that there are expectations of strains of the illness that may affect people differently, and that's where the concern is. Even if it's some sort of drug, or if you even will a poison, that's where we could see a lot of differences in how this illness is affecting the brain. So it's something we're going to keep an eye on too to get back to you. This has been an illness of questions from the beginning. Questions of where it came from have gone unanswered. Some surmise it may be simply illness versus potentially parasite or drug interaction. Even, again, we've heard this voodoo, aliens from space. What has been clear is it is indeed a human illness. There have been no instances or reports of animals becoming sick, but it is unknown if an animal or a bug could even carry the illness. So that's something that's of a concern that they've looked into regarding supposedly rats, mosquitoes, flies, ticks, various sort of animals out there that could be spreading this, and that simply waiting to infect someone who is more easily infected. Again, someone with a compromised immune system, that would be a concern to make sure that you're keeping yourself protected. What is clear that scientists and doctors from around the globe are coming together to find an answer to this illness, but the path is going to be slow going. So we hope that everybody is going to be as patient as they possibly can be, and everybody to work together to do their best to survive the situation as best as possible. Early on, the CDC advised on a ban on studying the pathogen outside of the highest levels of their testing facilities, and this has limited most of the research in these few areas to the US and China. So they're going to keep doing the research on this and making sure that they know exactly what's going on, and we're going to continue to broadcast and get you that information when we can. So again, stay tuned. Make sure that you share this information out, and we're going to talk to you soon. Here's another.
This is an important message from the Civil Defense Authority emergency systems. All citizens are instructed to return to their residence and shelter in place until further notice. Turn to your emergency broadcast station on your television, radio, or internet device to receive further instruction. I repeat, you are currently under a shelter-in-place order. Return to your home if able, or seek shelter immediately. Lodges of any kind are instructed not to turn away anyone seeking shelter. Individuals who are found to be in violation of the shelter-in-place order could face fines or jail. This has been an instruction from your Civil Defense Authority. Further instruction will follow this message on your emergency broadcast networks. Thank you. This message will repeat.